All right, everybody, as I promised yesterday, we got done with the lab, and guess what? We're going straight into another lab. But this lab is a little bit different. Yesterday, we were talking about the difficulty in understanding and seeing what it is that makes a kind of quasi-advanced backdoor tick, right? Like that particular backdoor, it's doing obfuscation. It's using base64 encoding, which is relatively basic, putting it into an underscore view state parameter. And then it's basically putting it in the clear. It's putting it in HTTP where everybody can see it. Now, once again, absolutely an attacker could totally just use full SSL TLS encryption and do all the things that they should do to make it so it's a lot harder to crack that nut. But I have found that whenever you're dealing with traffic as a network threat hunter, a lot of times when stuff's encrypted and it's suspicious, you tend to nuke it from high orbit. When something comes through as HTTP, it's like, oh, I have nothing to hide. And you're using steganography techniques to hide that data inside of that communication. In short, you're hiding in plain sight for people to be able to see what is actually going on. So, how do we detect those things, right? And this goes back to the MITRE ENGAGE framework, where it isn't just a matter of running a network intrusion detection system or running a firewall to be able to detect bad things on your network. It actually requires you to do network analysis to look for anomalies on your network that could possibly be command and control. And I've seen a bunch of like really super cool things in like the channels where people are talking about, well, here's how you would identify ICMP backdoors, which I think is just like wicked cool that people are talking about that and talking about all those different things. However, I did want to take a few moments and we can talk about some of that analysis. And once again, why it's incredibly difficult for people to be able to detect the types of backdoors that we're looking at, and why that like kind of hardcore technical analysis of like frequency analysis, k-means clustering, MADMOM, medium average distribution of the mean, and so on, are so incredibly important. All right. So it's absolutely critical that our organizations start doing this. But I want to talk a little bit about what is the like threat level and what is the level of an organization you should be at where you should really be truly worried about this, right? So if you're just a standard MSP and you're protecting doctors and you're protecting lawyers and you're protecting small businesses, you're really worried about your standard run-of-the-mill, just like what you see all the time, script kiddies that are doing things like ransomware. And that's fine. But when we're talking about this, when we're talking about doing this type of frequency analysis, this is really where you're upping your game and you're truly starting to detect those nation state level adversaries. So if you're an MSSP and you have customers that probably are doing DoD intelligence type stuff, yeah, you're probably going to want to start to do this type of analysis. If you're a large Fortune 500 company, you're going to want to start to do this analysis. If you're a company that just shows up in the Wall Street Journal, you're going to want to do this, because that is how our nation state level adversaries, especially the Chinese, choose their targets. Who shows up in the Wall Street Journal, then they go after them, because that's a really good way to steal intellectual property and find out what's going on in the business world. So we're really kind of focusing on that level. You're really starting to up your game and you're saying, okay, we're truly going to be attacked by an advanced adversary, which once again is an adversary that can bypass traditional security technologies. They are persistent. They're not just going to drop ransomware and like YOLO out, right? They're going to persist. They want to stay on your network. They want to steal that data from your network for an extended period of time. That's what we mean by persistent. Of course, threat means damages. So we're really talking about that second part. You got the advanced and persistent. We're going to try to find a way that we can identify persistence on a network. And as I said, we're jumping straight into a lab. The lab that we're going to be doing is the Rita lab right here. So we're going to go to Rita and AC Hunter. This lab is broken up into two separate components, and this is all changing. And I'm just going to tell everyone, we're going to skip over the Rita component. I want to explain why, but we want you to go to this part of the lab down here where it says, now let's play with AC Hunter, right? We want to go straight into the AC Hunter portion of today's festivities. The reason why is Rita has completely changed. We've completely released a new version of Rita. I've got to update all of the stuff up above with new screenshots and new tools and new output and all those different things. However, AC Hunter as it exists has not changed. And underneath the hood of AC Hunter is Rita. So Rita is the engine. AC Hunter is the fresh, awesome GUI on top of Rita. That Rita actually does the hardcore beaconing analysis for AC Hunter, but we've changed the heart of it. We've changed Rita quite a bit, actually, over the past few months. So in this lab, you're going to log into this training.ai hosted right here. You're going to get an SSL TLS warning. Just proceed. It's fine. And then you're going to log in with training at Black Hills InfoSec, and the password is got beacons right there. There we are. You can click remember me or not. We're all going to log into the exact same instance. And I want to walk you through some general things from the interface perspective of AC Hunter, because we're going to drop straight into a lab where I'm just going to start asking you questions. I'm going to ask you questions that you would not be able to answer if you're using anything else that's out there on that as well. Somebody said, sir, could you share the GitHub URL? Absolutely. We are sending that in. Dev Suthar, welcome. And by the way, can somebody post inside of, see, I think I can do it here. Can someone say, share the link out for the form to get set up for the VM? For Dev Suthar, if we could post that over on YouTube for them, that would be super awesome. And welcome, YouTube people. We greatly appreciate you. We appreciate you coming here and hanging out. So we're going to get you a link so you can get the full VM and you can play with us, but you will not need the VM for this lab, Dev, but we're going to get you hooked up. All right. So with this, we're going to log into this interface, and there's a couple of things that I really want to point out. The first thing is it's going to ask you questions about data sets. To get into the data sets, you would go here and choose the data set. So I'd say, I want to look at WinLab Agent, or I want to look at GCAT, or I want to look at PowerShell Empire, or I want to look at DNSCAT 2 with JA3 Strobe. You would select that data set, and these data sets represent different types of malware. Click confirm. Now you're in that data set. Across the bottom, AC Hunter gives you different views of that data set. It'll give you beaconing analysis. What are the beacons that it sees? It'll give you beacons by fully qualified domain name. It'll give you beacons via proxy if there's data that fits there. It's going to give you strobe data, long connection data. It's going to integrate with threat intel feeds for known bad IP addresses. Has a DNS view for resolution and how systems are resolving that. It gives you JA3 fingerprints. It also has cyber deception, which we're totally not using for this lab, but I'll talk more about that. So you're going to get these questions for this class, and it's going to say things like, in the WinLab agent dataset, what is the connection interval for 10.10.98.30? In the GCAT dataset, what is the historic fully qualified domain name for the system that's beaconing from 10.55.100.111? From the DNSCAT2 JA3 agent dataset, which domain has the highest count for lookups? You're going to go through and you're going to run this. All right. So you're going to start, once again, you're going to start right here at, now let's play with AC Hunter. The instructions still work up above. If you want to look at legacy output for Rita, that's perfectly cool, but we have completely changed Rita. It is now way, way more awesome than it was. We're currently overhauling the entire thing. So it's really, really cool. By the way, this is a commercial product, and I know that that pisses off some people from time to time. Don't get mad. Don't get angry. Be curious. All right. So I want to show you on AC Hunter. Yes, we have a commercial product. However, if you go to active countermeasures, you go to free tools, AC Hunter has a community edition right here. The community edition is free. You can set it up at home. You can run it at no cost in your organization. It just limits the number of data sets that you can work with. but it is also a free tool. So I'm not giving you anything here that's like, well, buy this product, or we're going to do this product, and now you're going to have to spend money. It's available to anybody. They can run it anywhere, small businesses at home with no problems whatsoever. And when we get back from this lab, I'm going to explain why we do what we do with this. So let's go ahead. Let's jump right into this lab. As you're finishing your questions, if you want to post your answers inside of Discord, go for it. You can actually create spoilers. And I think this is how we create spoilers. All right. So do you see what I just put in Discord? A little black box. Rita would be called an NDR, network detection and response. So you can create that spoiler by putting in two like up arrow brackets, or not up arrow, two lines right there. You surround what you type in that, and you can share it with people, but you're not going to ruin the surprise for people that want to work through it. Yeah, you could use the pipes. You can use the pipes. So you use pipe, put in what you want, put in two more pipes, and now it is a spoiler. So you can post your answers inside of Discord as you're solving these problems. Do we have screenshots enabled, folks? You need two pipes, folks, not just one. So it needs to go pipe, your spoiler, pipe. There you go. All right, and you can screenshot your answers and put it in. All righty? All right, everybody. Let's get rolling. Let's give you till 30 minutes. Not 30 minutes. It's like 15 minutes or so, but 30 after I'm going to do the walkthrough. So get rolling. I will see you on the flip side of this lab. Let's kick some music out for a little bit. And we are back. Let's go through this lab really quickly so people get an understanding of why this is so important. But before we get into this like too deep, I want to show you like what this is doing and why this is awesome and why we are so big on this idea of what Rita and AC Hunter actually do. So what I'm actually going to do before we actually start walking through this lab is I'm going to stop saying the word actually as many times as I've been saying it, because it's getting on my nerves. We're going to jump straight in and we're going to look at a completely different lab, as they would say in Monty Python, now for something completely different. And we're going to be looking at the lab that is called Firewall Log Review. And I'm going to show you how we can look at a packet capture and we can analyze that packet capture from the command line, from Bash, using our tools to get statistical analysis on a really small packet capture inside of the VM. So this particular lab, you can all play with it. It's something that I do in the Intro to SOC course skills course, but it's all available to you as well. Once again, trying to drive home the idea at Anti-Siphon. We try to make as many of these labs available as possible for the pay what you can methodology. And we're going to jump in, and I think I already have all this stuff installed, but I'm going to look at an ASA log, standard Cisco ASA log. We still see them in environments, and this is a connection log from a Cisco adaptive security appliance. It sucks. It's awful to work through this. Like it's real bad is what I'm trying to say. You're seeing connections from the inside to the outside. You're seeing TCP resets. It's just ugly. So what we want to do is kind of walk through what are some of the steps that I would do to find the specific fields for data size, to try to find specific fields for interval and things of that nature. So if I have a system of interest, let's say that this 192.168.1.6 system is of interest. I believe it may be compromised, as an example. What I can do is I can focus in on that IP address using grep. And I'm grepping out any of the connections that have my edge router, which is 24.230.56.6, piping it through less. And now I'm seeing all of the internal to external connections for the system that is interesting to me, right? I believe the system may be compromised. I can now see all of those connections. But now I want to start getting some level of analysis on different fields in that data set to see where can I actually start identifying patterns. So I'm going to grep out specific fields. I'm only going to show the fin or the TCP fin connections where I can see those things closed. And now I'm starting to see an internal to external communication pattern between the internal system for the inside 192.168.1.6 going outside to two IP addresses, 18.160.185.174 on port 443 and 13.107.237.38 on port 443 as well. So great. Now I can start seeing those patterns. I can actually drive, I just did it again. Look at the IP address 13. I can look at the IP address of 18. But now what I want to do is look at the last field and only the last field to identify connection patterns. And you're going to see that if we cut the last field, that the data size is almost the exact same for every single one of the connections. You can see that we have 1832, 1848, 1816, 1816, 1848, 1832, 1848. So we're seeing a really strong like beacon for data size on those packets. All right, go. So finally, and this is the part I don't think I have installed. Maybe I do. That'd be really cool. I don't know if I installed our tools on this system yet, but now I can do some math on that system using bash scripting with our tools where you can find the standard deviation, the mode, and the mean. See if it comes back. Nope, I don't have our tools installed. But if you look at this lab, it'll actually give you the mean, the mode, the standard deviation, and all those things. If I want to install our tools, the instructions are right up here, but that takes a little while in these VMs where you do sudo apt get update to update the VM. And like I said, it takes a while for it to actually go through and do that. Point of everything that I just went through, as long as that was going through it, that sucks. Don't do that. I mean, you can on a small packet capture. You can absolutely do these things if you want. But to do this with Bash or to do this with Python in a large data set is really horrible. And that's the whole point of everything that I just talked about. So when MITRE in the Engage framework is talking about how we need to do network traffic analysis to look for deviations, or we're looking for anomalies within that network traffic, this is definitely one of those things that is easier said than done. It is absolutely easier said than done because a lot of times we don't have the tools at our disposal in our organizations that allow us to do these things quickly and easily and effectively. Sure, we can use Python. Sure, we absolutely could use something like I guess, using Bash, what I'm doing here. But one of the things I want you to understand is that if we are using those tools, we're severely limited in the amount of data that can actually be processed in doing this in our environment. Come on, let it go. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Now it's installing. So we're very, very limited in the data size. So once again, if you're working in a class and they're like, here's how you can do this in Bash, here's how you can do this in Python, this is neat. It's really, really super cool that you can do this type of stuff on really small data sets. But boy, as soon as you start getting up to the point of over a gigabit per second and you start dealing with terabytes of log analysis, trying to find those anomalies becomes exceedingly difficult, if not impossible, to do. So with AC Hunter and Rita, it can do it at that level. We can run this, like I said, our customers are running this at 100 gigabits per second and doing the type of anomaly detection that we just did using Bash a few moments ago, running a whole bunch of different commands, looking at certain fields, cutting out certain fields, and then running it through our tools, which will be installed here in just a couple of seconds. It's installing it right now, but this does it automatically for us. So we're going to look at this through the lens of the questions that I asked you at the bottom of this lab. So if we go to the Rita lab, scroll all the way down, we have some core questions. It's in the WinLab agent dataset. What is the connection interval for 10.10.98.30? Now, once again, I can do that with our tools. You see, if it's, like I said, it's just slow. I can totally do that with our tools. I could totally do that with Python. I am not going to do that on a live production network with those tools. So I can go into that WinLab agent data set, and I think I'm now logged out. Let me log back in. There we go. Log in. There we go. So we go to WinLab agent, confirm, and then I can go to beacons and I can go right to that IP address. What is it? 10.10.98.30 right here. And now I can look at the frequency interval for that beacon on this system. So notice a couple of visual things that jump out at you, like really quickly on this as well. So right here at the bottom, you can see that I have roughly 300 connections per hour. These are buckets of data that's saying, how many connections do I see between these two systems each hour? And you can see that that histogram is relatively flat. We have a relatively flat histogram available for us to work through on that. That tells us there's some type of machine connection involved in this. This is great because even if the attackers are introducing some form of jitter, that histogram is still going to be relatively flat. And this backdoor is actually trying to get around k-means clustering with a couple of quick tricks. There's some tools out there that use k-means clustering as their algorithm. This is a machine learning algorithm. So if I go k-means clustering, we go to the Wikipedia on this right here. This is the math of k-means clustering. And I really like, just kind of telling people, it's like, well, as you can tell, this is pretty much self-explanatory for anybody out there. I mean, this is what, third grade, fourth grade math, I guess what we're doing here. But basically what k-means clustering is doing is it's looking for consistencies and patterns in data sets. So you can see these clusterings of different interval like families. All right. So whenever you're looking at a beacon, all right, so let's do beacon like Wolf of Wall Street, right? So we have a beacon, right? It's got a consistent interval in the beat that we have going on, right? So we have that consistency in that beat. But you also are looking at data size. What is the size of the data, right? What is the connection time of the data? And algorithms like k-means clustering, they will look at the attributes of data and they will look for consistencies within that data. So if we're going back to our instance, which now has it all installed, which is awesome. And if I go here and I do this right here, you can see on the data size, we have 1848, 1832, 1848, 1816, 1816, 1832. It's actually really tight. There is some discrepancies in the numbers, but the numbers are really close to each other, right? And if we drop in our RTool script right here, we can start to see that standard deviation. We can look at the minimum, the maximum, the mean, the standard deviation, the variance right here. So that's the minimum value. That's the maximum value. This is the mean as well. And the average variance is 12. Okay. So we want to be able to look for that because there may be some variances. Whenever you're looking at k-means clustering, you're not looking at perfect, you're looking at clustering. So knowing all of that, Geoff Thayer, the person that actually wrote this particular backdoor, he set it up with some interesting things that break k-means clustering. We have 3,729 connections at 15-second intervals, and then we have a left like drift right here, where we go all the way down 14, 13, 12, 10, 9, 8, where we're creating these other clusters. And then there's this big variance right out here. I can't quite see it, but there's one way off. And that's usually enough to completely throw k-means clustering off the case. So when Rita and AC Hunter run, they don't just look at k-means clustering. They actually use something called MADMA, medium average distribution of the mean, in conjunction with k-means clustering, in conjunction with standard statistical analysis, and now using ClickHouse, which is actually the database that we're using. It can identify this heuristic flat, like the histogram down at the bottom. So if we're answering this question, it says that we have 3,729 connections at 15-second intervals. And AC Hunter and Rita just dropped that right here for us, and we can visually see it. We don't need to go through and run this script to be able to do that type of analysis on this data set. So that is the first question that we have out the gate. The next one is in the GCAT data set, what is the historic fully qualified domain name for the beacon on 10, 55, 100, 111? So we're going to change our data sets. We're going to go back home. We're going to open this up. We're going to go to GCAT, confirm that. We go to beacons. And right here, you can see that the fully qualified domain name is gmail.smtp.msa.l.google.com or smtp.gmail.com. So what the hell is this? This is a backdoor that we created a number of years ago where all of the command and control goes through well-formed Gmail messages. So the backdoor checks email in Gmail. It looks for commands. And then if it finds a command in an email, it executes the command and then it emails the results back to itself in Gmail. So the reason why we created this tool is because I had a theory that most firewalls and intrusion detection systems weren't tracking anything at all that was going on in email traffic. It was just this dead zone that was being ignored by a lot of firewall vendors. Turns out we were right. Most firewall vendors, most intrusion detection system vendors completely ignore any and all traffic that goes to Google Mail and Google in general. And this makes sense if you think about it. One, you're violating privacy. You're going through and you're intercepting private email communications. And then two, if you're analyzing all the traffic that comes and goes to Google, you run into the XKCD tar paradox, right? So XKCD tar, wonderful little command here. It says, Rob, you use Unix. Come quick. To disarm the bomb, simply enter a valid tar command on your first try. No Googling. So how many of you Google commands like a lot every day as part of your job, right? And can you imagine if every time you Googled a command, the security team was getting an alert telling you that you don't know how to run tar to decompress and extract to its own directory, right? That's not something we all want to deal with. So yeah, it's actually funny. It's actually, you don't need the tick. You can do tar xvfz for gzipped, and you don't need the tick. It's one of those weird commands that doesn't need the switch with it. But there you go, huh? Guilty as charged, right? So yeah, that if we had that type of interception, it's great for visibility, but it's probably going to give us a bunch of things that we don't want to see, and we're going to get false positives. The next one is DNS cat 2 jaw 3. So let's go to that one. Right here, strobe agent. And we want to look at the DNS data. And this is what a DNS backdoor looks like. Let me enhance this a little bit. Let's go zoom. There we go. Right here, you can see that the number of fully qualified domains for the domain, top-level domain of r-1x.com is 62,468. That is a ridiculous number of subdomains. That should never happen in your environment unless you're using Kimry for hash lookups, but that's an edge case. But that's not normal. That is an anomaly in your network. And part of what AC Hunter does is beaconing detection, but also part of what it does is does anomaly detection for things like DNS data as well. So you can look at this and you can see that only one host did all of those lookups. And that may be normal. That could be your domain controller is your DNS resolver for the inside of your environment. Totally normal, totes legit, not a problem. However, it is also the only system that made any direct connections. So this is your DNS backdoor in your environment. This also would work for ICMP and ping-based backdoors, or not ICMP backdoors are ping backdoors right here. So, so there you go. So really, really super cool lab, allowing us to start doing that network anomaly detection that we've been talking about. And once again, tying that back to the MITRE Engage framework as well. So very, very cool stuff. Hope you get a chance to check it out a little bit more. Download it and run it at home. That would be really, really cool as well. All right, so let's move on and let's talk. Well, let's kind of close this up. A lot of vendors write signatures for things. And a lot of those signatures are based on patterns that they see inside each of the packets. What we're talking about here with anomaly detection is we're talking about doing that type of frequency analysis, doing DNS anomaly detection. That's what we're talking about. And for that, we need the proper tools to do that type of hunting. And here we go. we are now moving into poison and venom. So I mentioned this earlier, and I'm going to bring it up again, but it's just so important to everything that we cover in this course that we really need to focus on what is the difference between poison and venom in an organization when we're trying to set up cyber deception. And kind of the big story for me that happened years and years and years ago, Paul Zadorian and I really worked hard to get cyber deception up and running. And we went and we presented at Black Hat on this. We talked about it as a series of techniques. We released a bunch of different tools, things of that nature. And we got an interview request at Black Hat. And this would have been like 2009, 2010, things like that. And what happened is the interview lady was very nice. She said, "Are you actually counter hacking the hackers? Are you going through and hacking back?" And Paul and I were very clear. We don't recommend that because that's illegal. You're probably going to end up hacking another organization's systems that have nothing whatsoever to do at all with the attacker that you're going after, because they're usually compromising a third party server. And there's all kinds of legalities with that. You can get into problems. And honestly, just from a morality perspective, you don't really stop hackers by trying to hack them in that way without a full warrant available to you. And right there in the middle of the interview, she said, "That's not interesting to our readers. We're looking for people that are actively hacking the hackers." She ended the interview and walked away. And I was just like, well, shit. Okay, I guess that's that. She was polite about it. Basically, it was like, "You suck. This isn't interesting. We're not going to talk about this." And okay, I'm not going to lie, that hurt. That hurt a little bit. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I see Jeff has joined the chat. "I use Venom versus Poison as the same idea, server-side exploit and client-side exploitation." Yeah. So welcome, Jeff. Good to see you, sir. But yeah, I was hurt. I was hurt a little bit deep down. It hurt a little bit, right? So I wrote this class and I wrote a book and I did all of these things. Try to get back at her because poison is awesome. There's all kinds of things that you can do with poison. I mean, okay, we're gonna go through a whole bunch of poison things here in a little bit, but the idea is we want the attacker to interact. We want the attacker to come into our system, try to do something evil, and then we get them, right? Then when we say get them, we can do a bunch of different things. But my favorite things are like geolocate exactly where they are, because that's just a good time. So poison is something that an entity needs to interact with. It is something that can be taken. It is inert. It is not an active attack like Venom. We don't want to do that because once again, we totally could end up nailing systems, nailing services, hitting additional users that have nothing to do with what the attacker did. It's just a mom and pop bicycle shop. They're selling, new Trek bikes. They got the /98s in. Those are great bikes. You should check them out. Some people are into e-biking. That's wonderful. They're just running their shop. Meanwhile, the hacker is running their web server to launch attacks against your corporation. You don't want to bring down the mom and pop bicycle shop. It's not their fault. They're victims in all of this, right? So we never attack. We never attack. As much fun as it would be for us to openly attack the attackers, we don't do that because it's bad, okay? We don't want to do that at all. We want that bad individual to interact. We want them to interact with a Word document. We want them to interact with a Java app, web page, a honeypot in some fashion. All right. So at this point, what I like to do when we're starting to get into poison, I like to create levels. I like to create tiers, right? We can go from annoyance to attribution to full on attack. All right. We're going to start with annoyance. Because if we're looking at the detection time plus reaction time must be less than the amount of time it takes for an attacker to break into the environment, we really truly want to be in a scenario where we're going to increase the amount of time that attacker has to spend to gain access to legitimate services. So I'm going to go through some like historical things that kind of like were formative for me developing an idea and kind of a concept of cyber deception and what we can do, just some things over the years that I think are flippin' funny. First one is Mr. Clippy. So years and years ago, I had a friend of mine that had a website that if you were trying to hack his website, putting in cross-site scripting, putting in SQL injection, doing all of these different things, Mr. Clippy would totally pop up on that website and say, according to PHP IDS, it looks like you're trying to pwn my site. Would you like some help with that? And if you clicked on the link, would you like some help with that? It would throw you over to OWASP. So literally, while you're attacking that website, Mr. Clippy would pop up and say, "Hi, noob, would you like help learning how to hack?" That is awesome. Okay, that is absolutely awesome. What better way for an attacker to know that you're on to them, and you're kind of calling them names at that point. Now, let's talk about the psychology of this. I think that this is a good thing. This is fun. We can discuss this. You're an actual attacker, right? You're trying to hack into a website. You're doing bug bounty programs, and you're trying to find cross-site scripting and all of these different things. And all of a sudden, effing Mr. Clippy jumps out on the website and calls you a noob. What do you think that does to the psychology of the hacker? What do you think that does? HK is like, wouldn't that motivate you to try harder? Maybe. Deflates? Possibly. And maybe irritates them, makes them angry. Get good, noob. All right. So let's take a couple of different psychological profiles of attackers. Psychological profile of an attacker number one, they're just doing organized crime, doing crimes, criming for fun. All right. Now, they're out there criming. You don't want to get caught, because if you get caught, maybe you'd end up going to jail. So as soon as Mr. Clippy pops up on this website, just like Random said, now all of a sudden it lets them know that you're harder to hack than others. Just built different, right? Most attackers, like in the high 90s, are going to go someplace else. You've heard the quote from Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Every hacker on the planet is the most badass hacker on the planet until Mr. Clippy pops up and calls them an effing noob. They just got punched in the face. And a lot of them are bullies, and a lot of them are just going to go to easier organizations to hack. Okay. The other group of people, let's say nation states, I wouldn't really say that this would apply to nation states necessarily, but whenever I was doing hot nation state on nation state action, the one rule I was given was don't get caught. Don't get caught. And there's a number of reasons you don't want to get caught, right? You don't want to get caught if you're working on a nation state level attack because TTPs are going to be burned. You don't want to get caught because it's going to put the mission at risk. And as soon as you see Mr. Clippy pop, you now got a pretty good idea that at some level you are caught at that point. And by the way, if you are on YouTube and you're hanging out, we have 44 people that just joined. You should come party with us in Discord. We have a full Discord server. Just popped up in the top chat. You can come on over and you can join us over in Discord. We'd appreciate that. By the way, welcome to Anti-Siphon Training and all the things that we do. Don't ask me how we make money because I don't effing know. All right, let's move on. Another thing, this happened way back in 2007. You can still do it today. I have the link down below where you can do this for Apache and you can do this for versions and different operating systems and things like that. But a long time ago, I think it was around April 1st in 2007 when I first saw this. I saw this article that popped up about this website that was running Apache running on a Commodore 64. Right. And if you look at this server, you can see it's Apache running on an Auric Dragon, CBM PET, ZX Spectrum keys, Commodore 64, CBM PET, Toshiba, and effing Cray, right? Like you can see all these things. And this is the same website. And it was just changing what it was built with on a daily basis. Now, what was really, really super cool was the article I saw. I think it was on Boing Boing because that's the time frame. That was like Reddit before Reddit. And the person wrote up this article that was like, see this website? It's running on a Commodore 64. Commodore 64 could have been a contender as an operating system if we'd have just given it a chance. And we wouldn't have had to deal with all this Microsoft garbage if we had just stuck with Commodore 64. Somebody was trolled. in that article. They were trolled very successfully. The web server was not running on a Commodore 64. It wasn't. It was not running on a Cray. It was not running on a ZX rubber keys Spectrum system. It wasn't. It just wasn't. It was just changing its banner identification. And around this time, it was also changing its operating system fingerprint with a tool called OS which I don't teach anymore because it doesn't really work and it's buggy. But it was changing its operating system profile and it was changing what the banner was saying for the web server. Now, that may seem relatively trivial, but it rocks proper. And let me explain why. Whenever you look at fingerprinting of operating systems, okay, the fingerprinting of operating systems in Nmap looks at a bunch of different things like window sizes, looks like IPID, like the statistical and not anomalies, the statistical distribution of IPIDs, and different operating systems handle that math differently. With banners that are running on web servers, they like to announce what the operating system is that they're running on. Vulnerability scanners and tools like Nmap also identify operating systems. All right. So if we were to go over here and we were just simply going to run an Nmap scan, let's do SV against myself. This is going to take a little while, but it's going to identify the different services. What? That's weird. I don't think I have any IP tables rules. Oh, I don't have any ports open. That's one problem, right? But I can run it from against my Windows system. Let's do that. Do that. Grab my IP. We're going to let this run while I'm talking so I can kind of show you what a vulnerability assessment scanner sees. That. Actually, I'm going to do this a little bit different. I'm going to do everything in the kitchen sink. We're just going to do A. There we go. All right, so that's running. So whenever a vulnerability assessment scanner runs, it tries to identify and enumerate what a service is on the different ports. It also tries to identify what the operating system is. And then it matches up those service versions with the operating systems, and it looks up in common vulnerabilities and exposures, what are the vulnerabilities that exist for that specific system that have been publicly released, or sometimes not publicly. It depends on the scanner and whether or not there is a CVE associated with it. But it does that marrying of the operating system information, the service banner information to make a determination as to whether or not there are vulnerabilities associated with that. And we can mess with that. And that's kind of what happens when you do this. So right here, it comes back and it says, all right, the operating system is Microsoft Windows. All right. You can change your operating system fingerprint. Don't change your operating system fingerprint, but you totally can if you want to. But you can make your operating system look like something different, right? So here's the possible fingerprints for that. Then it has the possible services associated with this. So your vulnerability scanner takes this data with the possible operating system and the service information to come up with a vulnerability profile. And this type of like obfuscation messes with that vulnerability analysis. The other one that I think is a lot of fun is Honey DNS. With Honey DNS, you have a lot of unused IP addresses in your range. And whenever an attacker is trying to enumerate, they're going to try pinging your range with TCP and ICMP. They're going to run port scans. But the other thing they're going to do is a reverse lookup. They're going to go to your DNS server and they're going to do a lookup for what is the host name for various IP addresses that maybe didn't show up in their port scan and their ping sweep. The reason why is there may be ports that are open that aren't on the standard Nmap 1000 ports. That may be a system that's accessible, like once post-exploitation happens, you move laterally to. They're going to try to identify these servers. So what you can do is you can put in fake data in your DNS records. So you can see here we got cracked, farked, Bill, James, Kim, John, mail, SMTP, all of these different things. And if an attacker does a reverse lookup, it's going to show up that somebody tried to look up these systems. This can be a detect in its own right. Because the only thing that's here, let's say that's real in this particular situation, is like mail or SMTP or web. All right. The other ones like Jim, Bill, like FTP, all of those are fake. They do not exist. So as soon as an attacker starts asking for those systems that do not exist, we know that somebody is trying to scan our environment. We know that they're trying to attack our environment. And now we can react accordingly. We could deny list their IP address, which we'll get into deny lists here in a little bit. We could try to, I don't know, monitor them a little bit closer. But our detection capabilities have gone up, and the attacker's analysis capability, their attack time, has been just destroyed because now they're going after a bunch of systems that they just are never going to get. So the first time that I ever really talked about this publicly, I had a friend of mine, a friend of Jeff and I's, another instructor, and he asked to come to my presentation on cyber deception. And he wanted to disagree, very politely asking me if he could show up and he could disagree with this. And I said, that's fine. He's a good friend. He's going to do it politely. We're good. He showed up when I started talking about this and he said, I've done pen tests where companies are running cyber deception. And when I'm doing a pen test in those organizations, it takes me weeks to identify what is real and what's not. You're paying me to do a pen test. You're wasting my time by giving me these smoke signal or these smoke screens, and you're making it more difficult for me to do my job. And he's absolutely right. That is 100% true. But as pen testers, we shouldn't be asking our customers to reduce their security so we can assess their security. If you want your pen tester to avoid these, let them know where the honeypots are. Let them know where the deception technologies are so they can look for those real vulnerabilities. If you're running a red team, absolutely keep these honeypots and these deception technologies up and running all the time. All right, so we're coming up on our next lab, evil web servers. So this came from a pen test that I was doing a while ago where it was a long time ago, like 2008. And they had this weird thing in their web server where every link you went to generated a brand new random URL every single time. Even if we revisited the same part of the website, the same page again and again and again, it would simply show up and just give you a random URL. It crashed my web crawler, which was awesome. I thought it was the neatest thing ever. And then Ethan wrote a tool. Ethan works at Black Hills Information Security that replicates that, where it creates a DOS condition for somebody trying to automatically crawl your website to identify all of the web pages and all of the input fields as well. And that brings us to Spider Trap. So we're going to go into the labs and we're going to go down to the bottom and we're going to run Spider Trap. Now, Spider Trap is a simple standalone Python script, and you can put references in your website to, and you can have your like pages reference come to this. You can stand it up as a tactical tool, but it articulates this type of thing that you can do to the attacker. So you're going to cd into the opt spider trap directory. That means you're going to have to be running as you're going to be running inside of your Linux VM in the class. Then you're going to run spider trap, just basically running it with just a port on port 8000, and it's just going to give you random gibberish. Then we're going to run it again with spider trap, where we're feeding it a dictionary list from a tool that is designed to brute force and identify well-known directories in a web server. This is called Dirbuster. Then you're going to do a crawl. Don't let it run forever, please, but you're going to see what it looks like when spider trap starts crawling. So we're going to take, let's go ahead and do 20 minutes. I kind of pushed through the break. So if we could set the clock to 20 minutes, we will resume at 30 after, So with that, folks, let's kick out the jams and I will see you at 30 after the hour. It's actually like 17 minutes for the lab and break. No, it's not 30 minutes. We're going to resume at 30 after. So seeing him set up the timer. So there you go. Let's set it for 18 minutes. So it matches 18. There we go. And start the clock. Let's go kick out the jams. I will see you on the other side of this lab, everybody. Yeah, I don't quite know how they managed to get the music to just like end perfectly. But well done, team. Well done. All right, we are back. let's go ahead and let's walk through the Spider Trap lab and let's talk about why Spider Trap is amazing. And yes, if you do like the music, it is by Daft Hack, Bull Bullock. So please, please, please go follow him on Twitter. He has all kinds of amazing music. It's just really cool to have him be part of our team. He is also an anti-siphon instructor, and he does our cloud pen testing labs. The name of his group, even though it's just him, the name of the project is No Bandwidth. So be sure to go check out No Bandwidth from Bo Bullock, Daft Hack, one of our instructors, and just give him a shout out on Twitter. If everybody could just go say hi to Bo and say thank you for the kick-ass music, hopefully it'll keep him generating that music. The other thing that you should know is he has small children, so he's trying to do this music, late at night after stories, and yeah, he's a busy dude, and we're just grateful that he's continuing to do this. Also, Bo is also doing the soundtrack for a comic book that is coming up. Somebody can share a link with the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter's closed. We're releasing a comic book series called The Future Is. And the future is, what do you want it to be? Future is effed. The future is virtual. The future is whatever we want it to be. But we're releasing a graphic novel based on this. And I might be able to share it. Oh, would you guys like to see the first part of The Future Is? Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find it. I got cool stuff for you guys. Let me see. Where's my email? I have too many things. Here we go. All right. Get an idea of the vibe that we're going for. We had it on our website. Where is it? That's the trash can proof. I don't want that. I got to stop coming up with these things. Here we go. I think this works. Yes. Okay, cool. So this is the Future Is Ashcan edition. That is setting up the first part of it. Nice. Very good. All right. So let me share this with you all. I'd love to get your opinion. This is not like the whole thing at all. That's not what's going on here. But what this is at the beginning of the comics, we're kind of opening up the way that they opened up the old James Bond movies. If you remember in the old James Bond movies, you always started like this little mini action sequence. That was like the badass action sequence for something that you missed on that as well. But it's kind of like the ending of a story and then right beginning to another one. The Ashcan edition of The Future is what we are releasing at DEF CON. So if you're going to DEF CON, you'll be able to pick this up, and Jason will be there to sign it. I will not be. I am not going to Hacker Summer Camp this year. But you can take a look at it, but it gives you an idea of the quality of the art and the writing and the insanity that we're trying to do with it. So check it out and let me know what you all think of it. One of the things that's really important is all the hacks that you see in this magazine, or in this comic, you're going to be able to do. Anti-Siphon is partnering with MetaCTF to create scenarios. So whenever a hack happens in the comic book, you'll be able to see like a QR code or an Easter egg that'll lead you to where you can do that thing. So it's not just a bunch of really stupid hackery like crap that happens in a comic. And you're like, well, that's dumb. That's not how that would work at all. No, 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 no. You'll be able to do it as well. And kind of follow along with the story. All right. So back to Spider Trap. So if I go back to my instance over here, I have Spider Trap. It is in the opt Spider Trap directory. So I can basically, I'm going to get my IP address first. Let's go ifconfig like so. Got my IP address. We're going to cd into the opt Spider Trap directory. And we're just going to start out by running Spider Trap by itself. No big whoop. Nothing really crazy about what we're doing with Spider Trap at all. But it's simply going to be listening on port 8000. No big crazy thing with it. And it's going to serve up a random like series of links every time you visit that particular URL. So if I go to my system and we just go to the IP address and paste that in, go to port 8000. You're just going to see some random URLs. Okay. Once again, nothing crazy, nothing really, really cool. If you click on it, it brings up more random URLs. If you click on it, it brings up more random URLs and so on. So what I'm going to do is we're going to kill that really quick. And now we're going to rerun it, but we're going to rerun it a little bit differently. What we're going to do at this point is we're going to rerun it, but we're going to feed in a directory listing. This is from a tool called Dirbuster that is a list of well-known and established directories for a variety of different web servers. And we're going to literally be feeding into Spidertrap what it is a tool like Dirbuster or another tool would use to try to identify the directories on this website. And the whole experience changes at this point. So now if I refresh this, it's going to show up, and now it's actually giving us real directory names: 17, 48, 41, 0, 0, 27, 40, 40, 1945, 45, playtime. I redo it again. Or sorry, if I click on any of these, we've got Net Cultures, Noble GIF, Mandel P5, we've got Bud, Chemistry Guides, Download Know-How, Video Dell, and so on. But that really doesn't get to the point of what we're trying to articulate here and how this is going to mess with the attacker. Because you have people that'll look at this and be like, well, if the attacker sees that, then they're just going to not do anything. I don't understand the point. Let me show you the point. So most of the time, whenever an attacker is running an attack against a web server, right, they're going to automatically crawl that web server to identify all of the different links, all of the different URLs and everything on that web server. So what I can do is I can do this where I'm going against the IP address. I'm going to copy my IP address. And now instead of just like clicking on it, I'm going to show you what it looks like whenever an actual attacker uses an actual crawler. So I'm going to use wget. We're going to go R for recursive on the URLs. Now I'm going to hit the Spidertrap server. Now watch what happens. It just keeps going. It's still going and going and going and going. But now we need to have real talk, straight talk between you and me on what actually is going to happen once this happens. See, the attacker is going to run an automated tool to crawl the web server, but the web server is never going to end. It's just going to keep crawling and crawling and crawling a whole bunch of URLs again and again and again in a variety of different depths. And meanwhile, that web crawler is going to have to take into account all of those URLs, all those pages. And many times it creates a local copy of those web pages. It does this in one of two ways. Either A, it loads an entire sitemap into memory of the web crawler, or it does what wget is doing here. It's actually saving local copies of these URLs down to the local hard drive. So if I were to kill this now and show you what's going on, if we can share my screen back for just a second, you can see that there is a directory that is created on my computer system. It looks like somebody messed with the video. We're getting it back. There we go. Now we're back again. YouTube should be back. We all should be back. You should be able to see it. And we're back again. All right. Notice it created a directory. Created a directory called 172.22.181.17. So now if I cd into that directory, it literally created a file for every single page that it encountered. And what was stored on that page, as well. We could have someone check the YouTubes. That would be awesome. Oh, there we go. It just came back. It's all coming back to me now. This would completely fill up the entire hard drive of the attacker's computer system and just bring it down. Take it down to the ground. So that is awesome. So with this, you can see how this messes with the attacker's ability to successfully break into the organization. We go back to detection time plus reaction time must be less than the amount of time it takes for an attacker to break into a website. So now the attacker is running the crawler, and a lot of the attackers literally kick the crawlers off and go to sleep. They're just done. Did Ryan just say his cat jumped on his computer system and caused some ruckus? That is like the most badass, awesome reason for a stream going down ever. All right. So now they don't know what's real and what's not. We've just created this huge smokescreen. And a lot of the attackers wouldn't even know that there's something wrong until their computer system's hard drive completely filled up or their computer system blue screens because of memory issues. So that attack time now is way up. And meanwhile, while the attacker is going through and they're trying to crawl all of these bogus pages, you should be getting alerts and notifying you that there are shenanigans at play on this web server. So now the attacker is caught and the attacker doesn't even know that they're caught. And that's the best possible cyber deception. It would take them a very long time to understand exactly what is going on with this particular web server. Now, we just kind of walked through this. If you look at it, there's really not a lot of code in this as well, and that's how you kick it up. Now, a quick note on Spider Trap. For implementation, you're gonna have to redirect some pointers in your web page to actually go to the Spider Trap system as well. How does it handle legitimate crawling? Google Search Console for SEO. So what you would do is you would use robots.txt and you would basically tell the legitimate crawlers not to go to these directories. Now, if there was only a website that I knew that did something like this, let me check and see if I can find one. Oh, wait, I do. Let's go here. So if we go to sans.org and we check out robots.txt, these are all of the directories that the SANS website says to the legitimate crawlers that are out there, do not index these directories. So it's saying disallow every single one of these directories. And I want you to just understand from me to you, don't go to these directories ever. It will completely block you from going to the SANS Institute. SANS isn't setting this up and hey, you Google, we don't want you to go and crawl. Like, this is literally set up by Johannes, who is like an absolutely brilliant security researcher, and it will deny list you if you go to these directories. So it's kind of doing this. But that brings up a great point. If we put something inside of like robots.txt and we're telling legitimate crawlers don't go there, then legitimate crawlers aren't going to go there. Google and MSN and all of those are going to follow that. Whereas if you're a malicious attacker, you're going to go to robots.txt to find the directories that the organization considers to be sensitive directories. So this works exceptionally well. It parses out Googlebot. Your normal user traffic will never go there. MSN bot never goes there. Baidu, I don't know if Baidu will go there or not, but legitimate crawlers will not go there. However, the actual malicious attackers will go to this place to find your quote unquote sensitive directories and focus their attacks in those directories. And that's where you can have Spider Trap waiting. Hopefully that answers your question. Jair. So hopefully that answers the question. Now we're getting into an important part of this class. Not getting shot is important, or how to set this up at work when we start moving into all these technologies, because there's a lot of cool stuff that we're talking about, but some of the technologies that we're talking about are going to log, they're going to do callbacks to our servers. And we have to have a little bit of a conversation about how we're going to do that effectively and safely in your organization. But before we get too crazy, I want to talk about why this section is important for me. Okay. So a long time ago in a galaxy far, far, far away, I was teaching cyber deception to a law enforcement agency, not that one or that one or them, a different law enforcement agency. And this law enforcement agency was really interested in using attributional technologies for the explicit purpose of trying to get very bad people. All right. No, it's not classified. So they were super duper interested in doing this correctly. And, just how do we find bad people? And you're going to see a bunch of the technologies that we're going to talk about and actually be very useful in finding those bad people. Much like we have in this class, I set up VMs for them. Unfortunately for me, I set them up in Amazon where they could access these systems directly from the internet. And they could do all the things directly from the internet. So a little bit different than Cloud Labs. Cloud Labs, you're connecting in, you're in a portal. I think it's running in Guacamole or VNC over HTTP. and it's somewhat contained, but these systems were directly connected to the internet. We went through the labs. They loved the labs. It was great. We all had a good time, had lots of barbecue down in Texas, great food, great time. Fun was had by all. I got a phone call from them about 3 months after the class was over from one of their lead techs. And he said, "Wow, we really appreciate everything we got in the class. We actually used a number of your techniques to find this really horrible drug dealer. Just a really bad dude. Like one of those people that cuts off children's fingers to send it to parents to proof of life so they can get ransom. One of those people that cuts off people's heads and puts them in duffel bags and ships it to their spouses. This is a really, really incredibly dirtbag, horrible, bad dude. Just so bad. This guy was so evil." I said, "Oh, wow, great. So where did you guys set up your servers? Did you set up your servers in like DigitalOcean or where did you set it up for the callbacks?" And he said, "Oh, we we use the servers you set up for us at Amazon." I had forgotten to shut off their servers. So they continued to use these servers in operations because I forgot them. And they used my servers to find super bad drug dealer person. Yeah. So that's why this section is here, right? That's why this section, that's why we're covering this because this is an important thing, I think. All right. So you think you have a bad person, right? You have a bad person that's on one of your systems. First and foremost, once again, direct connections are a huge no-no. Don't do that. That's a boo-boo, and that would hurt. So like if I was trying to track down an adversary, they had a malicious IP address, and I literally just like started connecting and port scanning for my office or for my home, that would be dumb. That would be dumb. Don't do that. That's really, really bad. In fact, any direct connections whatsoever can be highly dangerous because it literally comes back to you. A recommendation is not to connect until you are sure you have what you need from an IR perspective and you're bouncing through some types of proxies to be able to do that. And you don't want to set it up so the attributional components are attributional to your company. I'm going to talk about how you set that up here in just a little bit. So if you're going to set up ADHD components, we'd recommend setting up like active defense, Harbinger distribution components in a non-attributable fashion, preferably on a third-party hosting provider someplace, right? Do not set this up on your own network for the callbacks. That's what we're talking about. So if I'm setting up callbacks for word web bugs, if I'm setting up callbacks for fake VPN servers, if I'm setting up callbacks for different files that they can pull down from PDFs to Excel spreadsheets to cloud technologies like S3 bucket connection information, I don't want that coming back to my corporation. What we want to do is set it up when things call back. We can set up a domain that kind of blends in a little bit with just general background noise of the internet. So whenever we're trying to name our domain, what do you all think would be some good domain names that we could use? Go ahead and type them into Discord or into YouTube. That's fine. But if you're going through and you're going to set this up, you want to create a domain name. What's a good domain name that you all could use for this? My old domain, PayPal, Intel updates, right? No, Javi, not Hills Black. Damn it. Bad Javi. Nothing to see here.com. That totally wouldn't arouse any suspicion whatsoever. What about ad servers? So if you have an advertising server, what are the names that ad servers tend to use? Put some in the Discord that I see all the time. Like here's here's some ad servers you see. And some other ones. No, not johnupdates.com. They're usually like some random gibberish.com, right? So if we can make it, ad.google, that's a good one. I like that one. Yeah, something with the CDN reference, content delivery network. Excellent. So we could comments on keyboards. You wouldn't want that semicolon in there, but yeah. So you do like some type of gibberish, you put ad in it, you do tracker, you do something like that, and it kind of starts to blend in. And if the attacker is playing around with these things, then they might see something to Dell updates one and be like, yeah, that's probably my system updating. Because the amount of garbage that your computer is going to is fairly ridiculous. And there's just hundreds of ads that are out there all over. Bankofbotswana.com. I like that one as well. So we would set that up, but we'd pay for that domain, we would pay for that hosting in some type of fashion that's non-attributable, right? We want it to not be associated with John Strand or my address or my phone number or my credit card. And I mean that literally. Please don't use me as your non-attributable servers. Please, no, no, not I am John Strand. God damn it. Stop. All right. I already have one scary ass drug dealer that's going to be after me in like the next 15 years when he gets out of prison. So I don't need the rest of them coming after me. All right. We just do not need that. So if we set this up, oops, there we go. We recommend using some like proxying, anonymizing software to set these things up. So let's talk a little bit about Tor, Tails, and how that works. So I'm going to talk more about deobfuscation of Tor here in a little bit. I have huge problems with using Tor or I2P or any of those different things, even just some like VPN software to make connections and stand up email accounts and stand up servers and pay for services. The reason for this is if you connect through Tor to Google to create an account or Microsoft to create an account or PayPal to create an account or different Proton Mail or any of these things to create an account, odds are they're going to flip out. And by flip out, I mean they literally will require you to send a picture of your driver's license or and a passport to be able to set up that account to make sure that you're totes legit as a human being. The reason for this is they are fully aware of VPN software. They are fully aware of Tor. And they're also fully aware that attackers are using these services to set up email addresses for very malicious things. All right. So, what we're going to do is try to find a different way that we can set that up with some level of obfuscation, but not so much that it freaks them out. Right. So, you can set up a third party hosted server and bounce through that server in Amazon or in Microsoft. That tends to work pretty good. Right. VPN services may not be as anonymous, but maybe all that you can do at that point. Also, with email, I generally recommend avoiding Google and Microsoft, mainly because privacy is not really their thing. Kind of seems like I'm teaching you all how to be criminals at this point. And maybe I am. Maybe we're using the exact same types of techniques that you would use if you're a criminal. Yeah, and you got proton.me, even though lately people are like, well, Proton has actually worked with law enforcement. Yeah, maybe with some law enforcement for some cases they will work with, but for general inquiries, they're not going to respond, right? So I still like Proton, even though some people hate it. It's, you got to do what you got to do sometimes out there as well. So you would go through, create a Proton email account, and you would set it up so all of your emails, all of your domains and all of your PayPal accounts would utilize that particular email account. If you're using 10 minutes email, this is something that you want to stay alive for a while. It's not something you're just going to set up and then just never log into again. You're going to be actually using it as the main registration for a number of different websites. I also recommend if you have to provide an address, use a famous place that has absolutely nothing to do with anyone associated with you, but you will remember. My favorite example of this is Blues Brothers, not Blues Brothers 2000. Blues Brothers, greatest musical movie of all time, hands down. Worst movie of like movie of all time, Blues Brothers 2000. It's catastrophically bad. Yeah, you can use 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. What did Blues Brothers? They used like, I think it was like Wrigley Field or something like that. And yeah, you can use a place that means something to you, and don't even have to memorize the address, but it's something you can quickly look up, and then you'll be able to like answer those questions. Hosting providers can get a bit insane about how they verify who you are. Amazon can get very, very strict. Sometimes you'll have to upload or convert ADH tools or reinstall the tools on an existing VM. I strongly encourage you to actually just reinstall the tools from scratch. That's why a number of our tools and a number of our labs, they go through and they show you exactly where you can download and install those tools from directly on your own server. Another quick point. Okay. So, quick note, one of my favorite places to do non-attrib connections is Walmart's and McDonald's. I know this seems weird. especially the Walmart thing. I get that. But if you go to like Walmart, you go to a food court, you sit down, you join the wireless network, and you do your trickery from that Walmart network. Usually, Walmart and like McDonald's and hotels, they will set it up so all of the traffic for Walmart, for the hotel, for McDonald's, for big chains, all comes back to a centralized point of presence and pops out in someplace like Atlanta. All right. So that works really well because you're actually blending in with literally thousands of people that are using that wireless network as customers. And odds are, if somebody actually going through and like tracking back what that IP address was at that specific time in that specific store, really, really low. I might actually, if you're being really, really paranoid, I might shy away from Walmart because Walmart's been doing a lot of facial recognition stuff, which I hate. I hate the fact that when I'm checking out, it shows me the facial recognition stuff working. It just pisses me off. I would check out for like Taco Bell's and geolocate your IP address to make sure that it's not geolocated to that specific Taco Bell. I check the vendor that you're working through because it's possible that Taco Bell just does a local ISP. You want to go with somebody that's popping you out as far away as possible from the actual place where you are. I know Walmart does this. I know McDonald's does this. Um, I don't know about Costco. I don't know about Costco at all out there as well. Excuse me. Taco Bell and a pen test, that doesn't sound like a bad thing. Taco Bell amazes me. There's so many people I talk to. They're like, "Yeah, I love the Bell. It's awesome." And then you talk to them, "Have you ever been sick?" "Oh yeah, I've gotten food poisoning tons of times." And they keep going back. Like whatever they're doing there has got to be like super addictive. I don't know. Or we're just moving closer and closer to Demolition Man, where Taco Bell wins the food wars, I guess. So, all right. The other thing that you want to do if you're creating a non-attributable instruments, you have to be ready to destroy it. In short, I don't want you to get too attached to your servers. Are you changing your MAC address when you do this? Generally, I don't, but you can change your MAC address with NetSH on Windows and with ifconfig on Linux-based computer systems. I tend not to get that crazy. But yeah, if you're that worried about it, absolutely go with it as well. All right. So as I said, you have to be prepared to destroy your instances. It's just something you gotta be ready to do. I see people that use these servers and use them for multiple different like just they don't just use it for one and done and get out. I recommend if you're setting up anything for ADHD, especially for attribution, you're going to go through and set it up for the op, or you're going to set it up for a short period of lifetime. Let's say it's going to be a month or 2 months or 3 months. If you usually have a couple $100, that's more than enough money to get you through that operational time window as well. Also, DigitalOcean works really, really well. No guarantees though, especially if DigitalOcean starts to see malicious type traffic from your server, they might get a little tweaky. You may have to notify them that you're doing things like attribution, you're a legitimate company, things like that. Burner phones. I don't want to get into burner phones. It's going to take me a little bit longer to talk about burner phones than just the 2 minutes that we have left. But yeah, burner phones are absolutely essential for doing this, right? Because if you're setting up these services, a lot of these services require you to have a cell phone number that they can track, like send text messages for two-factor authentication, and to also verify that you are in fact a real human being. I'm a real boy. So with burner phones, you have a lot of options. We're going to talk about burner phones in a little bit more detail when we respond in 10 minutes. So let's take a quick 10-minute break, hit the restroom. We will resume and talk more about burner phones. All right, we back, everybody. Let's keep rolling. I was gonna make a Limp Bizkit reference, but it seems weird to like make a reference to Roland after listening to like Bo. Just seems dirty, like everything from Limp Bizkit. It's really weird. Just a couple quick notes about Limp Bizkit. Like, I didn't like them at all whenever they were out there. I like them better now that they're a bunch of old guys leaning into the old guy rock thing. But Limp Bizkit at Woodstock 99, horrible. Also, Red Hot Chili Peppers, total a-holes at that concert. But here's the thing. Limp Bizkit was touring with Korn. And Korn is awesome. They were like really good friends. It's just really weird. All right, but that's all I've got to say about that. Let's keep going. All right, so burner phones. So a long time ago, one of my youngest son, was in middle school. I was teaching a lot of these classes once again to law enforcement, and as part of the class, you would actually get you would actually get from the class a burner phone. We would go buy these phones in bulk from like Walmart and Target, gas stations, wherever we could get them, and we would set them up for my students, and they would go through and they would set up their accounts with these burner phones. Excuse me. Oh man, I shouldn't have drank that whole can of low sodium V8. Totally not a sponsor of the cyber deception class here at Anti-Siphon Security Training, but John Strand loves his low sodium V8. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one in the United States that drinks it. Anyway, back to it. And my kids really wanted cell phones, and I was kind of well. Our kids got cell phones way earlier than they should have gotten cell phones, but we did try to hold back as long as we possibly could. My youngest son, though, didn't have a cell phone, and because I would teach these classes for the government, a whole bunch of the people would just leave the burner phones at the office. So I had like this box full of burner phones, and they had like very little data and very little minutes on them. But my son wanted a cell phone, and he would go in and charge up these cell phones, sneak them into school, and like play games with his friends on them. Well, his teacher caught him, of course, and immediately was like, "Hey, what are you doing with this phone?" Blah, 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 blah. My son was like, "Well, it's my dad's like burner cell phones." And the teacher was like, "What? Your dad has burner cell phones? He's got a box of burner cell phones." So I had to go into the school and explain to a really terrified middle school teacher why I have a box of burner cell phones. And I still believe to this day that she never believed me. But when I get these cell phones, I go and buy them at like Walmart, I buy them at Target, gas stations. There's different apps that you can use. It depends on how crazy you're going to be, right? If you're just setting this up for a corporate, look, getting a burner cell phone and rolling with it is fine. If you're just working against organized crime or your general run-of-the-mill script kiddies or just the general hackers that you see out there, this type of stuff is great, right? It's perfectly cool. However, if you're going up against nation state level adversaries, you may want to go a little bit crazier. You still will want to have a burner cell phone, but never, ever, ever turn on your burner cell phone and activate it and then shut your regular cell phone off at the exact same time. Why would I recommend not doing that? Why would we say you never turn on your burner and then turn off your real phone? Why would we say that's a bad idea? Lots of people. Yeah, same area. The geo tracking on the back end. And that sets up a huge detect for people trying to track shenanigans that are going on. So what I kind of recommend doing is if you want, like, activate your burner phone and then also your regular phone in like the parking lot, or activate your burner phone in the parking lot with your phone. And I don't know, man, it's really tough. You want to create as much separation from your real phone, from your burner phone, depending on just how crazy you want to go. Also, the same reason news companies follow pizza routes to the Pentagon, right? There's a lot of that going around in the world of classified spookwares these days, where people drive around and try not to get tracked and all these crazy things. It's kind of nutty. It's actually really, really super duper nutty out there as well. Well, I actually had one customer where I had to go to an airport to meet them and jump on an airplane because it would create plausible deniability as to why my cell phone would be off at the airport. So we literally met in the airport, had a conversation, had my cell phone off, and they're like, "Yeah, this is just to make sure that," and his cell phone stayed at his office. They get weird sometimes. They get really, really super weird from time to time. But it all depends on how crazy you want to get and how much like a real spy you want to come across as. Right. There we go. So how do we pay for all of this? Well, honestly, don't ever use your personal or corporate credit card. Years ago, when I was doing stuff for the government, they were always big and don't get caught, don't get caught, don't get caught. And then here, use this credit card and it's registered to the United States government. It's like, okay. The dumbest thing that's ever happened to me in doing stuff with the government was I had one op that we were doing. It said, "Don't get caught, don't get caught, don't get caught." And then they insisted that I use DoD IP address space to launch the attack. They're like, but this is government IP address space that's reserved to Department of Defense. It's designed for these things. And I'm like, you don't want me hacking from a DoD IP address if you want me to be not attributable back to the Department of Defense. It's kind of crazy. So what I recommend doing is going to Walgreens, possibly in another state, go through and is PinePhone still a thing? I have one in my drawer. I don't know if they've updated him. I don't think that they've been updated recently. Have they? Click on that. Maybe. I don't know if they're still or they're still usable. I don't know. We'll get some opinions from people here. Ask my son. Thank you. Good point. Good point. But yeah, go get a prepaid gift card. Visa, American Express, MasterCard gift card, pay with cash. A lot of places will require you to use use cash to buy a gift card with that as well. And then you're going to create a PayPal account that's tied to your non-attrib email account that's tied to this gift card. And like I said, having a $100 to $500 is usually enough for a 2 to 6 month operation that you're doing. So what this looks like is you have all these callback things, these little honeypot things, honey badger, canary tokens, honey ports, spider trap, the whole shoot and match, all of it over there. And all of these things call back, but none of these things call back directly back to your hosted system. All right, directly to your hosted system. It's going to go directly to your hosted system in your environment. It's going to go to your hosted system that's someplace else entirely different from where you are now. All right. So we're going to make a transition into honeypots, and we have a really long honeyport lab coming up here in just a little bit. But when we're creating a honeypot, it's interesting to me that most people, whenever they think of honeypots, they kind of reduce it down to a simple concept, an old Windows computer system or a Linux computer system connected to the internet. And yeah, when Lance Spinster was doing this, when he was creating the HoneyNet project and trying to learn information about hackers and what they were actually doing, that's what they did then. But if you're looking at honeypot technology has really expanded and grown into a variety of different things. A honeypot can be a full system, absolutely. But a honeypot could also be a honey token, a honey record, a honey table, a honey cred, anything that you have out there can be a honey thing, right? A honey USB stick, as soon as you plug it in, it beacons back and it lets you know that somebody has plugged it in or they've ran some files on it as well. But the point of any honey thing that's out there is it should resemble something of value to your organization that an attacker would want to gain access to. This is actually kind of critical if you're going to do this properly. And the reason why it's so critical is because there's psychology associated with it. If you're just creating just dumb files, the attacker's not going to be interested. But if you actually put the files in and you give them a name like social security numbers, medical information, credit card information, financial transaction information, that now is something that's very interesting to that attacker out there as well. Excuse me. All right. So we should be able to honey all of the things. And when we tie this back to the MITRE ENGAGE framework, we're now deploying a set of decoy systems, creating a target network, developing personal information, executing software on a target system, configuring computer system to serve as an attack target for the attacker. We're trying to create something fake for that attacker to interact with and waste their time. And the more time that they spend actually wasting their time, and you have detective capabilities around all those honey things, the better your security support structure is going to be around your deception approach. All right. So we can look at this in two ways, like research honeypots or production honeypots. Years ago, the research honeypots were all the rage because there was a huge swath of people that didn't understand hacking. They didn't understand hackers. So they would set up these honeypots to learn the techniques of an attacker. So it could be as a recon, as Ghost Shell's talking about. They would learn about attackers through honeypots. What was their exploit? What was the network traffic they were using? What were their recon techniques? And that was really valuable back then. When we move forward to actual day-to-day operations, we want to move towards something called low interaction honeypots. And a low interaction honeypot is more of a production honeypot. You want to set it and forget it. You want it to run, you want it to do its thing, but you don't want to think about it. You don't want to dwell on it. You don't want to love and care and keep up support contracts on it. You just want to set that thing so if an attacker interacts with it, it is absolutely a super high fidelity alarm that something is up in your organization. Something really bad is happening in your organization that ties into your incident handling procedures. So many attackers out there, they will use, like I said, research honeypots to try to learn about what attackers are doing. We want it to be in production. We want it to be a tripwire that lets us know that something is up. Now, if you are dealing with this, like learning about attackers, it really boils down to what your primary goal and objective is. Is your primary goal and objective to just like learn about what attackers are doing? Or is your primary goal and objective to like detect and clear as quickly as possible? Both of these are valid, right? Not one of them is better or worse than the other, but it'll really determine how much time you're going to spend allowing that attacker to dwell in your honeypot. If you're running it to just kind of learn what the attacker is doing, you may want some higher interaction honeypots that emulate services. Like one of the ones we're going to work with here in just a little bit is called Cowrie. That may work really well. Or if you're just trying to detect and clear, you may just want it like a fake RDP honeypot that as soon as they try to RDP, it lets you know that somebody's doing something that they shouldn't be doing. If we are setting up an op in a company, do we change our location every 2 months? Not necessarily. I wouldn't worry about that if you're setting for the callbacks. But as soon as that callback is used in a real attack, or you're using it in a real IR, or you're using it in a real engagement, once you're done with that engagement, build it back up again from scratch, Jody. So it's almost like a tripwire. It's there, it's fine, but as soon as the attacker trips it, you use it for the IR, then you move to a different location and set up a new series of servers for it. I hope that makes sense. But you just set it, wait, it triggers the callback server, you use it for what you need to do, and then you stand up another one as well. So that once again, like learning about what the attackers are after. Are they after top secret? Are they after credit card information? What other systems did they have access to? And can our honeypot actually track that for us as well? Oops, there's my mouse. There we go. So why use them in production goes back to our formula we talked about at the beginning. Detection time plus reaction time must be less than the amount of time it takes to be able to react to the attack. It has to be. It has to be. If we're not doing that correctly, we're in trouble. And a ton of other security technologies don't really play into this calculation very well at all. There's very little variability. If you're looking at a lot of EDRs, you only know about something happening when the attacker has deployed malware in your environment. It may be a little bit too far down the attack chain for you to actually deal with it. Okay. And also, none of the traditional security technologies can impact the work effort of an attacker in such a way that it provides value to you. So we want to do something that wastes the attacker's time, increases that attacker time, and decreases our detection time as well. And this brings us up to one of the things that is super easy. Everybody should do this everywhere. It's so stupid simple. There's no reason why anybody wouldn't do it. So easy, a caveman could do it. So we're going to talk about fake users, honey users. Honey users can be set up in like LinkedIn. You can create LinkedIn users that say that they work with your company, right? And you can give them a role that's enticing. Just share out, what do you think would be some enticing roles for attackers if they were looking on LinkedIn? What would be some roles that, yeah, systems administrator, what else? CISO, excellent. Managing interns, screw you, Brian. Accounts payable, accounting manager, accounts payable, all of these things, right? These are all valuable and they are great targets for an attacker. Now, what would be some things that you would do to that account to make it spicy and super exciting for the attacker to go after it? Not just the title, but what we put in that like role, not just a title, what they're doing, HR, IT, not that, but what we put in to make it enticing. Ivy League graduate. Excellent. Very good. Tech stat deets. Excellent. Technologies used. Anything that can make your profile seem like they're bragging is awesome. So if you have somebody's profile and you're like, I'm a full stack engineer, or I'm a 1% engineer, or what are some other really cocky like IT things that people put in their resume? Invented object oriented programming before object oriented programming was a thing. Like it's just crazy. Like anything you can do to like just IT warrior. Oh my God. That one's so bad. AI expert with 10 years, anything expert, right? Anything with expert. I have people from time to time, they're like, well, we need to talk to the owner of Black Hills Information Security, not the managing intern. I'm like, cool. I don't want to party with you anyway. Right. So that's kind of funny. Networks me. Excellent. Try to hack me. That might work. Cybersecurity ninja manages the biggest database of credit card information ever. I love that one. That is so nasty. But we've all seen garbage like this, right? We've all seen people do things like this in their LinkedIn profiles. So think of like the skeeviest LinkedIn profile stuff that you can possibly come up with and totally put it in that LinkedIn profile, right? Mental. Oh my God. I swear, this is like what is that dating app? It's like the worst Tinder, right? It's like the worst Tinder app profiles. Just do that, but like layered on top of like LinkedIn, right? You want it to get just thick because attackers, when they see like the HR douchebag buzzwords, attackers are going after that person. Like I cannot stress this enough. Like if you're like, I'm an IT wizard or I'm an IT security ninja, yeah, the attackers are coming after you because you're going to click on any freaking link that I send you that makes you feel good about yourself. So create those fake LinkedIn profiles associated with that user, right? But you can also do that on the inside of your network. And that's going to bring us to the next lab that we're going to do. That's going to take us up to and through the break. We're going to create a Honey user. We're going to introduce you to a tool that Bo created that is called domain password spray, but we got a special version called local password spray. And it's just going to spray the local network. And we're going to show you how you can create a user account that whenever somebody tries to spray that user account internally, it generates an alert. So super, super easy for us to do. All right. So let's go ahead and let's jump into that lab. We are going to be doing Honey user. All right. So this is the lab. And it's going to take us up to and through the break because we're going to play with password spraying, creating the account. We're going to be creating a new rule in our event viewer to be able to just flag on the Frank user, all of these different things set up. All right. So it's going to take us up to and through the break. So lab time is going to be 30 minutes. 30 minutes, folks. We're going to do this for 30 minutes. So you're going to go through and you're going to go into event viewer and you're going to create a custom filter in Windows Event Viewer. I'm going to talk about why this is so important here in just a little bit when we get back. Trust me, it's actually kind of important. And then you're going to run a password spray against your system, and you're going to see that that event is triggered for somebody trying to access your Honey user account as well. All right. So with that, I don't know. Let's go ahead and set this one for this isn't a 30-minute lab. Let's set this for a 20-minute lab, if that's okay. Let's go 20-minute lab, and then I'll do 10 minutes, and then we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll kind of talk about this, and then we'll move on to the next one. So 20 minutes on your marks, get set, go. And we are back. All right. Let's go through this lab. All right. So once again, the goal of the Honey user lab is we want to go through and create a user in an environment that is soon, gosh, what is with just burpee today? We're going to create a user that as soon as somebody even touches that user, even thinks about touching that user, it's going to generate alert. Now we're creating this inside of Windows Event Viewer, which is kind of lame. Not going to lie about it, but it's kind of lame. But the point that you should take from this is the super lame event viewer that's built into Windows 10 We can create this in less than 5 minutes on a Windows 10 system. Your super expensive sim that you're using in your environment should be able to do this too. Like we're just kind of setting the stage a little. So if you're like, oh, I don't know if we can do this in ArcSight, there's something seriously wrong with your sim engineer at that point. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create 200 users on this system. Oh, I've got to create a new system. A new system. My stack is down. No, I still got time. There we go. Or I've got more time on this other system that I created. Come on back. Come on back, Shane. There we go. All right. So naturally, everything's getting wonky. There we are. Okay. I'm going to have to create a new system. This one is timing out and getting weird. Let me start a new stack. Oops. Go to that. There we go. Wait for it to go. And I've now started 2 systems apparently. So we'll go there. And I'm going to put my mouse inside of this as we go through it. I'll probably just have to talk through it, which kind of sucks. I like actually doing this. Oh, that's a bummer. All right. So what we're doing with this is starting out by generating 200 users. The reason why we're starting with generating 200 users on this computer system is because we want it to actually look like a real computer system in Active Directory, not just with a single standard user that we're just going against a handful. We're doing 200 users so we can make it look like an honest to God password spray attack is starting. So we're letting this guy start up. Now, the next thing that you do in this lab is we actually create the rule. And I want to keep my cursor in here. It's coming back up just slowly. And we're going to create the rule associated with this particular user. In this lab, we're creating it around the user named Frank, just the standard straight Frank account. Why did I name it Frank? Just because, I guess. So we create it by pasting in the XML down here that says inside of the security rule set or in the security event logs, we're going to create a rule that anything that touches the target username Frank, it's going to trigger this filter so that we're able to see that user account has accessed this particular computer system. Where's my mouse? It's coming. Oh Lord, they coming. Here we go, getting logged in. This takes a couple of seconds, and then we'll be ready to go. So when we create that filter, one of the things I don't know if you noticed with this lab is you didn't actually successfully log into the Frank account like at all. You logged into a bunch of other user accounts, but you didn't really log into the Frank account. And that's intentional because this rule allows you to trigger that particular alert regardless of whether or not somebody successfully logs in to the Frank account. By the way, Frank is the reason why I named it Frank is I don't know if you remember the movie Cars. I don't know why when I was creating this lab. I think I was watching Cars with my kids, and the tomater is like running away from this huge combine and says, "Oh, that's Frank." And I was like, "The Frank account? It is, ladies and gentlemen." Good. So now we have this up and running. So now we're going to go ahead, run as administrator. Let that do its thing. Takes a couple of seconds for it to start. Yep, that's the one. So now you get to know behind the actor studio. So we're waiting for it to start. There we go. Now we just do a drop down, open up command prompt, cd into the tools directory, and then we do 200 user gen. There we go. Now we're creating all of the users. That's great. So now we can go into the event viewer and actually create the rule. And like I said, we're just going to create a really simple basic rule under the Windows event log. So we can create a custom rule. So you can go, we're looking at the security event logs because that's where the user events for like accessing different user accounts exists. So we're going to create a custom filter for that. I'm going to need to grab this XML right here for this query. Let's grab that. There we go. There we go. We're just going to go straight into the XML and just edit the query manually. Yes, I know what I'm doing. There we go. And then we're going to type in the clipboard text. And then we click Oakley Dokley, and we should see, uh-oh. Did I not copy it correctly? Looks right. Oh, I didn't do query list. I missed the top of the XML. All right, so let's paste that in. There we go. That looks much better. There we go. We'll just call it Frank. Click OK. Alrighty. And you see that we already have some rules in here or not rules. We have some alerts in here. These are all of the logs for us creating the Frank account itself. All right. So nothing to like freak out about. It's just, these are the 4 event IDs that are created whenever you create a new account from scratch. So now let's go ahead and let's get started with the actual password spray itself. Invoke PowerShell, my bell. Set the execution policy to be unrestricted. A little bit of copy and paste magic. That didn't work. There we go. Let's try this again. Copy and paste. Oh, just took a couple of seconds for it to go through. There we go. Now we're going to import the module local password spray, which is from Bo, the gentleman that's providing the music for us in this class. And this is actually a password spraying utility that we use all the time at Black Hills Information Security. We use it constantly. So now we're going to do a password spray, but we're going to log into each of the accounts with the exact same password of winter 2020. It's going to pull down a list of all the users. And here in a second, you're going to see it go green with the users it was successfully able to authenticate to. And as I said, you're going to see it doesn't log into the Frank account at all. And that's normal. No successful login to Frank whatsoever. But that doesn't mean that this rule did not fire, because if we go back here and we do a refresh, you can see that we now have additional access logs for somebody trying to authenticate as Frank. So in your SIM, what you would do is you would literally set this up in your environment. So an alert would be triggered, and then you would, generate an alert, and you could do some additional things. You could actually go through and set it up so it would trigger, but also isolate and lock that computer system out as soon as somebody tried to authenticate as the Frank account. That would be fine too. What would be some other things you could do with it? Oh, one of the things you do need to do is you need to authenticate as you need to like log in as Frank, because if you don't log in as Frank, then it sets the last login date to January 1st, 1601. And that is the epoch time for Active Directory for user account access as well. John, could this Honey user directions also use the rule to see if an admin account tries to get elevated? Yeah, you could. Absolutely. You could do that too. So when we come back, we'll go through and we'll talk about why this is so easy to do and why you need to do this as quickly as possible in your environments. But right now we're going to take a 10-minute break. We had 20 minutes for the lab. I did the walkthrough. Let's take a quick 10-minute break and then regroup. So we'll see you in 10. All right, we are back. All right, let's keep going with the slides for a little bit. Here we go. Now we're kind of moving into some like canary software. We're talking about like honeypots, honeyports, things of that nature. And this is kind of like the same vein as like a honey user. It's basically if someone interacts with it, then you know that there's some type of shenanigans going on with it as well. But what we're going to start doing is starting to create different services. And I thought it would be time to put on this fantastic hat. I like this hat. from Rekka Publishing. So whenever we're running this, we have a number of different scripts that Canary tokens like makes available to us. And of course, as soon as I do this, sorry about that. Had to mute and sneeze for a second. My bad. All right. Yeah, so yeah, these are nice Rekka hats, and you can get them in the Spearfish General Store. So if we can get a link out there, we've got that. Also, we have the anti-siphon powered by Black Hills Information Security shirt out there. So if you're looking for like some clothes that'll help make you trip, or at least make small children ask questions like, why is Rekka spelled backwards? And you have to explain it to them in a playground, and you're just like, this is really complicated. But no, we have all this stuff. You guys can check it out in the store. So we have a bunch of different scripts that Open Canary releases: FTP, HTTP, SMB, SSH, Telnet, and a bunch of others that are absolutely phenomenal. And for every single one of these, we can set up alert notifications for them. And this is absolutely essential. You can have SMS notifications, email notifications, Twilio notifications, council mandrel keys, a lot of notifications. But the point is, you're never going to create something that's cyber deception in nature that doesn't have a corresponding alert associated with it. Brian just said, it looks like it's mirrored. Yes, if you're ever looking at this and it looks like it's mirrored, that's how it comes. And the reason why it's like this is because when you look in the mirror, you'll be able to see the hacker you always knew you could be. So check that out. It's pretty cool. All right. So all of these things are designed to generate alerts whenever somebody interacts with them. And once again, that is absolutely key. Security through obscurity is awesome as long as you have the appropriate alerting and logging to go around with it as well. So that's, yeah, mind blown. That's Rekka. That's Rekka Publishing, and that's what we do. There's also a number of commercial solutions out there. This one is a company that was founded by a friend of mine, Gotti Everon. He sold it. I can't remember what company he sold it to, but he sold it a while ago. But a very, very super cool tool. And he created this concept called like breadcrumbs, where you create these breadcrumbs that push you into a variety of different services that pull you back into these decoy servers. So the point is, you just don't create a bunch of honey stuff out there all the time, but you're going through and you're looking at it like, how do we actually create a funnel that pushes those attackers into the Honeypot projects or the Honeypot systems in the environment as well. And this takes us to the last portion of today that is going to set up a bit of a challenge for some homework for you all tonight. We're going to create a honeyport. And for some of you, it is absolutely going to be a challenge. And some of you, it's probably just going to be something where I'm going to have you copy and paste it directly from the slides. It has to do with how comfortable you are with bash scripting. And I'll walk through what we're actually doing here. What is the problem that we're trying to articulate, and just trying to do some fun stuff. So honeyports, once again, are trigger that can be that trigger an action when they are connected to, right? Like blacklist to the IP address or deny list to the IP address. Generate alert, fire up Mr. Coffee. So you're ready to go with some wonderful caffeine that you can drop straight into your veins. And if they're not done correctly, you might be in a situation where you could deny list legitimate computer systems. But we have to understand how connections actually work before we get too wrapped around this deny list concept. So the first and simplest system like process that you should have on your computers is one called failed ban. This is so stupid easy to install on your computer system, and it works so effectively to stop attackers for trying to do brute force password attacks that it almost should be installed in every operating system by default. How exactly does it work? Well, fail to ban is monitoring authentication failures. And it can monitor authentication failures from a wide variety of applications. It can monitor them from Telnet, weblogs, SSH, and if it sees a certain threshold, which is tunable by you, of failed login attempts from an IP address, it'll automatically ban that IP address from connecting to that computer system for a configurable amount of time. So if somebody's trying to brute force your SSH server or even your web server for the authentication logs, it'll simply lock them out for like an hour, and then they can have some cool off time, time out, and then they can come back and then they can try again for like 10 more failed login attempts, and then they can try again. Once again, this is one of those things that absolutely messes with real world attackers in such a way that it just makes them go away. It becomes very, very difficult to try to break into an environment that is running something like fail to ban in your environment on it as well. So this brings us to kind of the last thing that I'm going to set up as like homework that you can work on while you're doing this and while you're setting, like while we're doing Ask Me Anything, which starts here in a little bit. And then also I'll do the full walkthrough tomorrow morning for everybody. So the point of this lab is to create a simple script that automatically drops anybody that connects to a certain port from the command line. Now, a lot of people at this point start getting really uncomfortable. They're basically like, wait a minute, if we automatically drop as soon as somebody connects to a certain port, isn't there a possibility the attacker could spoof an IP address and we deny legitimate computer systems? Yes, there's always a possibility, but no, you shouldn't care about it. And tomorrow, whenever I do the walkthrough, I'm going to explain exactly why. So we're going to create a deny list script that as soon as somebody connects to you, it automatically drops, that IP address from ever connecting in again as well. So this is usually a lab that takes me about 60 minutes to do, but I like kind of doing it on this break because it gives people more time to actually work through it overnight for those that want to treat it as a challenge. All right. So for those of you that are kind of comfortable with Bash, I'm going to break down the ingredients in this soup that you're going to use to create your own script. The first thing is IP tables. IP tables is an incredibly powerful firewall that is built into Linux. In fact, almost all of the commercial firewalls that are out there today, they're actually running Linux IP tables under the hood, and they've created a fancy GUI top of it as well. So if we're looking at a very, very simple rule in IP tables, I can create a rule like this. Notice the pound prompt denotes that I'm running as root on this system. IP tables minus capital A, that means we're adding a rule. Input means the input chain. The three main chains that you're going to use are input, output, and forward chains. So you can also jump to NAT and other ones, but we're going to focus on input, output, and forward chains. The protocol is TCP. The source IP address is 172.30.42, and then we can jump it to drop, which means as soon as that is matched, as in that IP address is matched, it's automatically going to drop any and all traffic from that IP address. So as soon as somebody tries to connect to your system from that IP address, it's done. Now, the goal of this lab is you want this to be a variable that is automatically assigned from someplace else. And I'll explain what that someplace else as well on that as well. So, all right. So if you want to clear your rules, you do IP table space minus F. If you want to list all of them, it's IP table space minus L. So we're going to do a bash scripting. And I love this as an introductory to bash scripting because a lot of people, you take a class on bash scripting, it's kind of a bit boring and it's kind of hard. Or you try to take another class on like coding, it's like, well, here's a method, here's a class. I really like coding classes that start up with concepts that you start by building things that are immediately effective. And that's what we're going to be doing here. So the first thing is we want to create a loop. So there's a number of ways to create a loop in Bash. We're just doing one that does while space, open bracket, space, one space, close bracket, semicolon, do something, semicolon, done. This means it's just going to continue looping on forever. You could do while colon, semicolon. You could do while squiggly bracket, true, close squiggly bracket. Number of different ways that you could do a loop. This is just one way of doing a loop on that as well. Yeah, Network Manager has the capability for you to create rules from the command line that you can import as a variable. So as long as you have access to Bash, you can create the rule in Network Manager. The same, like as long as you can run it from the command line and you can script it, you've got this. You can do this. If you wish to assign a variable, you can do like foo equals bar. We've just assigned the value bar to the variable named foo. All right. I love this AI enabled machine learning secure cloud-based firewall. It's just IP tables under the hood. That is a beautiful meme, Raza. I'm going to give that a thumbs up because I think that's hilarious. I also like using cut on this as well. So you can do uname minus A, and let me kind of show this with you. Let's go over here. Oops, went the wrong way. That. Let's open up bash. There we go. Uname -a. And this will display it's Linux, it's desktop. This is the version running on Windows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So notice that we have different values that are being displayed here. And there's a delimiter specified here. So I can do this command, uname -a, pipe it through cut. We can specify a delimiter as a space. And then I can actually go through then and I can specify what are the fields that I want to see. So if I do F1, oops, that is not what I wanted. Let's do that again. Not CUD either. I can specify the delimiter. And if I start at 0, oops, start at 1, you can say Linux, desktop, the version, number 1, SMP. We put the whole thing together. You can see how I used uname to literally cut out each of the individual characters one at a time. And I did this by specifying the delimiter. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to use cut. You can also use sed and awk if you hate yourself. I think I did it with awk because I hate myself. So you could play around with how you get those certain values out of a long string, and then it can become a variable. I think I can do that. Let me try to do that. Let's do off-roading. That sounds like fun. So I can take uname -a, right? I can take uname -a and I can specify a delimiter. And then I can do this where I can do foo equals, that is not what I want. Let's do foo equals. Now, when we do this, I don't think this is going to work, but I'm going to check it out. Nope, it doesn't work. So now let's change this up a little bit with some spacing. And we're going to add in a backtick. Like that. Now I'm going to add one here. Like that. Do that. Now I can do echo foo, a $ foo. I've got to give it a $ because it's a variable. Now you can see it's Wednesday. Now I can take this delimiter and I can change it to 2, and I've renamed or I've reassigned that variable in foo, right? So my off-roading worked. That's fun. All right. So we can do that. Pretty easy to do. Now we're going to be using a tool called Netcat. And Netcat is a really simple port listener that will do anything you want it to do. We call it the Swiss Army knife of computer security. Let me show you what we can do with Netcat. So I'm going to open up a command prompt. I'm just going to become root on this prompt. And I'm going to do just a basic Netcat listener. It'll listen on port 2222, like so. And it's just a really, really basic listener. So if I connect to myself, like that, absolutely nothing happens. But I can type stuff and it shows up on the other side. So this is a network-based pipe. So I can pipe data back and forth with Netcat. All right. Now, if I want to get really crazy and get effective with Netcat, I can start playing with verbosity, right? So I can do like a -n and I can go -v. So now it can says I'm listening on port 0000. That means on anybody that can connect into it. And then I have the family and the port number. Now, if I connect to it, watch this. I get another message from Netcat. It says connection from the IP address in question. So what you want to do is you want to capture that IP address and assign it to a variable. So I could do this again where I could do, let's do foo equals, do a backtick, netcat, be verbose, listen on port 2222. And I can pipe it through grep. And we're going to grep the string from, and then we're going to pipe it through, let's say, cut. We're going to specify the delimiter, and the delimiter is going to be a space. And then we're going to get the field number 123. Like so. Let's see if this works. So now I've got my Netcat listener, and then I'm going to connect to it, and then I'm going to kill it. And let's see what happens. Let's go echo. Like that. And I got nothing. All right. So now I got to mess around with my delimiters, right? So did my command actually work? Well, what we can do is we can start playing with this entire string and see if I can get it to work that's inside these single ticks. So I can do this, paste it in there, make the connection, kill the connection, come back and see if we got anything. There we go. So I've got the connection received. That's weird. So I got the line there. How come it didn't show up above? Well, that requires a little bit of troubleshooting. And tomorrow I'm going to walk through all of that in a lot more detail and exactly what's going on. I'll give you a hint. It has something to do with shell redirects. Shell redirects. All right. So if we're going through this, you're going to want to capture the output from Netcat that puts its data into a shell redirect. And we'll talk about that more tomorrow. Some of you that know what I'm talking about, like, aha, I get it. All right, so grep allows us to like grep out certain strings, and pipe allows us to chain that data piece to piece to piece to really kind of like whittle it down to just the single value that we want to get. We need to do that. You can also deal with shell redirects. Where 0 is standard input, 1 is standard output, and 2 is standard error. What's weird is Netcat, whenever it gives you a message, it doesn't put its data from that message into standard output. It puts it into standard error. So if we're looking at kind of like what's going on here with me off-roading, if I try to run this again, you can see that I'm getting output from Netcat. But if I make a connection here as well into it, I can go 1, 2, 3, and I can hit enter and then close it. Netcat's going to tell me it received a connection, right? It received a connection from that system, and I didn't hit enter fast enough. Let me reset this up. I screwed up. There we go. This is what I get for off-roading. So now I'm going to do this, make the connection. We go 1, 2, 3, 4. Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre is at the door. There we go. And we now have that connection has been received. But the data that I sent was sent to standard output. So whenever I did this, this cut, there's nothing from Netcat that came in because the string didn't work. None of the strings matched the grep statement. So if I remove that grep statement, like so, do this, remake my connection, kill it. Now you can see it printed 3. All right. So what we're doing with this is Netcat puts the data that you send through it into standard output. Anything from Netcat is going to be sent to standard error. You have to find a way to try to separate out those two. That's what's going on. All right, so you're going to need to chain some things together. You're going to have the output of a command might be assigned to a variable you'll call error. Once again, standard error is so important. You're going to have to break your commands up and look at your output as well. Now I have the answer right here. All right. For some of you, this is a challenge, and I want you to treat it as such. For others that are very unfamiliar with any of this stuff, you might want to go to the solution, and then you'll type it, you'll get it wrong. And then you'll type it again, you'll get it wrong. And then you'll realize there's a space on either side of the 1. Then you'll run it again, then you'll get it wrong. And then you'll realize that you used a colon where you should have used a semicolon, then you'll get it wrong. And then you'll see that Netcat is L, not a 1, but you're going to struggle with it. And all of that is fine. That's good. That's how we learn. It's one of the things I try to talk about a lot whenever I'm teaching is how in the hell do people learn and get good? Well, usually what happens is they fail a lot. And you really shouldn't look at failures as like these huge frustrations. And I blame the education system, the Western education system, specifically because it was created by a bunch of oligarchs around the turn of this last century in the 1800s, coming into the 1900s, because they wanted people to sit in factories that could read instructions and sit for 8 hours a day. And that's the way our educational system is established. But no one wants to talk about that. Instead, we really need to focus people on not treating failure as a failure, but treat it as a learning process. And that's what I want you to do. If none of this makes any sense to you, try to type in the entire command and then cross-reference with the slides what we did. Don't wait for me to do it tomorrow. I want you to fail. I want you to struggle tonight or tomorrow morning, because whenever I walk through it and explain what's going on, it's going to make a lot more sense to you. And with that, we'll do this lab as a walkthrough tomorrow. And now it's time for Ask Me Anything. So, what questions do you all have for me? Any questions? Randomed is coming. Failures are just scope improvements for excess. Yeah, I've learned far more from my failures. Like almost everything that I'm good at, I failed at a lot in computer security. Anything I kind of halfway suck at, it worked the first time. And my brain just disregarded it. It's like, you don't need this. What happened to the Howard the Duck poster? People want to know. I'm rotating out my posters. They are still Polish movie posters. Even the Firefox one is a Polish movie poster. But no, they're just Polish movie posters on that as well. Vim or Emacs, it's easy. Vim, super easy. But no, I absolutely love Polish movie posters. They're the best movie posters in as well. What course did you recommend for beginners again? So this is the end of like a 3-class series for me. So when I have people start, I recommend that they start in the Intro to SOC Core Skills class, and then you move into Intro to Security, and then this would be a more advanced class on that as well. When did the new Rita get rid of the show commands? Exclusive, just so you know, Rita is new, is like a full ncurses display. So you can run Rita in real time. It's awesome. You can run Rita now without your hands leaving the keyboard. So check out, I think we did a webcast on that at Active Countermeasures on the new version of Rita, but it is out. Firefox is the early 80s a fighter jet movie with Clint Eastwood. That is absolutely correct. It is one of my favorite movies as a kid growing up. Will there be any courses to attack the attackers? We will talk about that later on whenever we get into the attack phase. I'm going to spend more time talking about like get a warrant. You need to get a warrant before you do these things. And then I'm going to kind of point you in the direction that you can move to do that. But no, we don't have a class on how to attack attackers. We just don't. Yup. I don't think I saw it in the theater. I'm pretty sure I saw it on HBO. Was that the same year that The Last Unicorn came out, though? Someone could check. Did Firefox come out the same time as The Last Unicorn? Are you going to offer the Velociraptor course online? That is a question for Mr. Patterson Cake. Hit him up on Twitter. I also think he's here on Discord as well, but we're working on that as well. Okay, Ghost Shell. What is my opinion on quantum computers and cybersecurity? Excellent question. So I set out to try to find like the world's best experts in quantum computing, and literally every single person that called themselves an expert didn't know what they were talking about, really. And then I actually found the people that were the experts on quantum computing, and they like when you watch interviews with them and people ask them pointed questions, they're like, I don't even know. Like, seriously, I'm not joking. If you look at it, quantum computing, Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. In fact, there's some of the godfathers of quantum computing were people that set out to disprove quantum physics and tried to prove standard like Einsteinian physics, and literally proved that quantum physics were a thing. But let's not worry about that now. So whenever you're looking at a lot of quantum computing, it basically boils down to the double slot experiment. So with the double slot experiment, imagine that you have a radioactive piece of material, and then there's 2 iron shields, and there's let's do 3 iron shields, and there's very thin slats on like 2 of those. If somebody can get a picture of this, there's some great things out there. So what happened whenever they put radioactive material or even light, but radioactive material is what they used, they sent it through, and you would expect the dispersion of radioactive particles hitting it's actually like a photographic paper on the other side to be in a predictable pattern where it should be, because the iron slats wouldn't allow light or allow radioactivity to go. Turns out that shit totally didn't happen. You totally had situations where the particles were hitting outside of the realm of where they should be. And this basically proved that whenever you're looking at like little elements and little particles, they exhibit properties of waves and they exhibit properties of particles. And then there's also something called probability associated with it. This becomes very important here in just a couple of seconds. So what you're doing with quantum computing is you're looking at waveform probability as far as when's like whether or not something would happen. All right, so as we're moving forward in time, I want you guys to understand that the weight of everything around us, including our consciousness, actually creates a waveform probability that collapses into what we consider to be reality. So whenever you're thinking of reality moving through it, I want you to think that you're in a wave trough. And as you're moving forward into the future, there's a whole series of possibilities that exist. But as you get closer to that future, the actual waveform probability for today, right now, at this moment, collapses in on it. And this is where it gets really weird. Observation causes waveform collapses. So if you're looking at a particle, that particle is going to take a state. Before that particle is observed, that particle is in an indeterminate state. It's not both. Let's say it's top spin, bottom spin for a quark. It could be a top spin or it can be a bottom spin. Before it's actually observed, it's neither and it's both. That's really effing weird. So what quantum computers do is they take advantage of this uncertainty that exists in the spins, and it basically allows you to reach into a probability set without actually observing it to pull out the condition that you're looking for. So let's use this as an example, password cracking. If you look at most password cracking, it's something called non-probabilistic hard. Basically, you have to brute force all possible combinations of passwords to find the right one. But using quantum computing, you can reach into this infinite, like amazingly huge sea of possibilities without actually observing and pull out the quantum state that you're looking for, i.e., the password that you're cracking, and pull it out. This is flipping insane. And the way that they do this is actually very similar to the double slat experiment, except a little bit more complicated. They're actually creating lithographs. So whenever you're looking at quantum computers and qubits, they're not like general purpose computers. They're kind of like lithographs, and certain states are allowed through the lithographs under certain conditions. So you can create a quantum computer for a very specific type of task that exists. There's a number of different companies out there like D-Wave that are creating quantum computers that are really super cold to very low temperatures. They're about the size of a refrigerator, sticking with the cold theme, and they effing work, people. So this is absolutely crazy cool because it does put a lot of crypto at risk. How likely is it that we're going to have a general purpose quantum computer that's going to be used to crack all passwords? Pretty damn low. But if you want to see an excellent movie with that type of like premise, check out the movie Sneakers. It doesn't talk about quantum computing, but it's very, very similar to the idea of a box that can crack anything. That's a fantastic movie. You should check it out. If you want to like read an absolutely horrible book by an author that didn't even bother to read the Wikipedia article on crypto, read Digital Fortress by Dan Brown, or don't. Just point at it in the bookstore and laugh at it and shame anyone that reads it and thinks that there's something valuable that comes out of that book. Great question. Next question. With Honey user, is one user big enough in an org? It is, Jody. The reason why it is the attacker's not going to go after that specific account. But when we did the password spraying is done across all of the accounts very quickly. So just because that Honey user account exists means that the attacker is going to hit it. This also ties into having a better understanding of where it is that attackers go when they're trying to break in. Like, talk to any pen testers. What are their opening 5 moves post exploitation? Once they get on a network, what are the opening 5 things that they do time and time and time again in an organization? And you will find they will do things like curb roasting. You will find things that they do things like password spraying, group policy preference files, running things like Bloodhound post exploitation as well on there as well. Oh my God, there's a lot of comments coming through right now. All right. So yeah, you just have to have it in one place with a password spray. It's going to work. For Rita, would you or someone share the link for the video for the new Rita? I don't know where it's at. Hopefully check the active countermeasures YouTube.
I'm looking around for it too, John.
All right. Thank you. Sounds good. Top 3 honeypot traps. You should run honey users, Absolutely. You should run Honey Docs as well. Number 2 and number 3, I love Honey Shares, and we'll do the Honey Shares lab in the next couple of days. All right. The Azure Quantum Computing Service is emulated. The real stuff is super expensive, crazy power intensive as well. Right. I'm not a US citizen, but come as PR. Do I stand a chance? What do you mean PR? Come as a PR? I don't know what you mean by PR. Oh, permanent resident? No, you can still get into computer security. I mean, seriously, like BHIS, we have a ton of people. We just so happen to have a New Zealander who hired that Kiwi. But we also have people from India, we have people from Germany, we have people from all over the place as well. But you're a permanent resident. You should be able to get in. The only thing that you're going to have trouble with is getting a job with anything classified as well. Blasted Kiwis. All right. Any other questions, folks? There it is. Nope, that's not it. That's the training. Okay. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, let's wrap it up, everybody. Oh, here we go. Someone asked about privacy.com. Is it safe to use? It's about as safe as anything else that I would do out there as well. Okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, I don't want to speak to like things being better or worse too much, but here's the problem. Okay. So question just popped up, offer code review or mobile pen testing training. Yes. I have a class on that I've written in conjunction with a number of people at BHIS on Android pen testing. I want to get this class out really badly because people need to be pen testing their Android apps as much as they possibly can. Nope, that's not it either. Here's the problem though. Um, the problem with it is we use Corellium, and Corellium is awesome. Yeah, the legendary Android class. The problem with Corellium is Corellium has really tight restrictions on who can access it. So they literally ban anybody coming in from India. They ban anyone coming in from some Southeast Asian countries. They just ban them completely, which is really, really frustrating to me. Yep, we have a Rita webcast. That's where we're releasing the new Rita. That's it. We haven't done it yet. That's why. And from the Middle East. And this kind of gets a bit weird, but I'm just going to be blunt. I'm trying to get them to give us, yeah, and even Jesse got denied as well. So I have a meeting with Corellium coming up, and what I want them to do is create a special registration link for people taking the class so they don't get banned. Okay. Just absolutely frustrating to me that they do that. And it's really hard to teach a class. You could use Android Studio, but it sucks. All right. Like as at BHIS, like seriously, if you're going to learn mobile app pen testing, you're going to use Corellium. Like this, there's no way around that. You're going straight to Corellium. You can try to use Android Studio, but Frida is installed by default with Corellium. Your system is rooted by default with Corellium. Like it literally takes tons of things that you either A, have to wait for a new exploit, or B, you have to work for hours to try to get it to work, and it just makes it happen. So I don't want to screw over, by the way. I don't want to screw over Corellium because we're working with them. They're being super awesome. They're just a little bit paranoid. And the reason why they're paranoid, and this is crazy, they're paranoid not because of legal restrictions of like, people using it for bad purposes. They're paranoid because of Apple coming back and suing them again, because of licensing agreements on an international perspective. It's flipping weird. But we're working with them and we're going to get this worked out. I'm just going to say, hey, can you guys give us a discount code that you automatically know that someone is a student of mine? Any of those different things out there as well. So, all right. So with that, folks, let's wrap it up. I have a bunch of stuff happening this afternoon. We're hiring a bunch of people for the coffee shop. We're going to be there as well. Yeah, the Apple lawyers are absolutely no joke whatsoever. But I will see you same time, same channel tomorrow. Super excited about it. Day 3 of active defense cyber deception is coming up. Get your honeyports ready to go, and I will see you in the morning and walk through it.
All right, everyone, have a good evening.